Welcome to the Live Service Podcast. I am one of your weekly begrudging hosts, Guns. And with me today, we have a slowly dying from, I was going to say lymphoma, but that was going to be really, really dark. So I decided to you're just dying now.
We're, we're
Brian.
we're all slowly dying. It's just, we're born and we grow for just like 20 years and then we slowly die for like 80. And then
Wow,
that's
man,
that's life.
that's so. One of my friends, I forget how young some of the people in my Discord are. Ben is 23, Shadow is 25. I'm 30. I think Kittens is 37 or 38. Um and most of us are between 28 and 32, the majority of us. And so like I wish somebody had told me it's like, yeah, everything feels fine and you're doing great until you're 28 years old. And then suddenly everything hurts every morning you wake up. And there's new things that go wrong. Like once every couple of months, some new things just don't work on you. And there's no explanation as to why.
Yep, that's life. That's the way it is. I'm in my 30s now. Well, I have been, but I'm now older because I had my birthday last week and yeah, just you wake up hurting.
Yep.
It's
Ugh.
the old cars when they were like you got to let it warm up. That's your body when you get older. You gotta get up and let it warm up. And
You
then
gotta let it warm up.
when you get going, you're all right. But in the morning, you're just like, it hurts to
Well,
move.
I used to do this thing where I could go. I do like pre-workout stretches, pretty regularly. There's a couple of key movements that I do to help loosen me up. But now I'm having to do post-workout stretches too, because last week I came home from the gym and my shoulders were just fucking so tense, like rolling my shoulders forward or back, just fucking like it was like I was dying, and I was like, this sucks. What the fuck? So now I got to do that. I've also noticed a funny trend for us. Remember how we said we want these episodes to be like less than an hour, shorter and shorter? Our trend is longer and longer episodes
Yeah, I know.
ever since we
Last week we
started.
talked a lot. We talked way too much. Well, not last week, the week before. Because last week we
Yeah.
didn't have because I got sick and it
Yeah.
was wild. But uh,
It's a wild, wild time. Well, we can. There's some things we could talk about news wise that I don't really want to talk about because they're beaten to death like a fucking dead horse. But what's been going on in your life, Brian? Has anything fun happened this week?
yeah, I got the amazing offer to stream on you now. And they were like, "Hey, we noticed that you're a creator. I haven't streamed in like 2 years. We noticed that you're a creator, and we want you to try out our place, and you're willing to give you 100% subscription and blah blah blah." And like, I mean, it sounds good, but it's probably if it sounds too good, it's for a reason. Also, I haven't streamed or put anything on YouTube in years. Why are you sending this to me? You're not researching very well.
Wait, YouTube?
It's a place called You Now. I don't know what it is. I got an email from
Um,
like a marketing person about like, hey, come to our new streaming platform, blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah.
it's, to be honest with you, all these new streaming platforms that are popping up that say they'll give you 100% of your subscription, they're usually lying to you. They aren't giving you 100% of your subscription. They wouldn't make any money if that was the case because they're not running ads on their platform. So it has to be like a lie. It has to be. And the other thing is that
Well,
there's nobody.
it's probably like 100% of like certain parts of what you're earning, but not everything. Or they probably break it down. Like,
It's, but there's usually some other scam going on with it too, like in there somewhere. That's because all these streaming sites popping up is just like it's getting really out of hand lately.
well, and you can tell they just got a random list, of, like names of people who possibly could be creators and just emailed. Like it wasn't where they were like, hey, the creator, they actually filled in the actual template. They didn't go that bad, those ones you've seen. But
Yeah.
you know, if they'd done any research at all, I'm not one to be messaging about this because I don't do that anymore. And even when I did, I never made it past affiliate, you know? But aside from that, I almost cut my thumb. Well, I did cut my thumb. I lumberjacked for real. We were cutting down trees, right?
Mhm,
On a
mhm,
friend's
mhm.
property because they're building a house out there and they're paying me to help them out like once a week and stuff. And we were cutting down some property and they got this big like this loader, right? It's the same like cat loader, the same one you see like construction companies using and stuff. And we needed to fill it with hydraulic fluid to come in like 5 gallon buckets. And the tab that you peel off, just like the ones you get on like your orange juice and stuff, broke, just like the ones you get on your orange juice and stuff too.
Oh no.
So I had to cut it out, and the plastic was so thick and got hung up in a part because they didn't pour the plastic to make this tab right. That when it slipped, it cut my thumb, which wouldn't be a big deal, and it isn't a big deal in the end. But it cut my nail, not my thumb, like my into my nail.
Stop talking. Stop talking.
So that happened to me.
Ah! That's horrible. Fucking Christ. Um,
We just,
there
put a band-aid on it, taped it up, and I kept working.
there are bees on my back porch.
Oh yeah, we had to deal with them when we were cutting down trees. We cut down one tree and got attacked, and we are like, "All right, we're gonna go cut down those trees over there for a little while you guys calm down." But tell me
Um,
about your bees.
they are burrowing into this wicker rocking chair on the back porch. And my grandmother, being the genius that she is, I mean, people have probably heard repeated stories about the idiot that my grandmother is. It's that lead poisoning, man. Uh, um, it's like a running. We've talked about that before,
Yeah,
haven't we?
we've
The
talked
lead
about it. I
poisoning.
think I think the last one 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh my god. But anyway, there were she like pushed the chair and a bunch of bees came out of it and stung her a couple times. She's not allergic. I've never been stung, so I don't know if I am or not. I don't want to find out. Um and then she's like, "Oh, well, I'll just take some bug spray and go spray the wicker chair with it." Which did nothing because it was bug spray for like roaches, spiders and ants. And like when you're buying certain types of bug spray, you do have to buy it for specially formulated bugs because they usually use a type of like neurotoxin for the bug to kill it that's usually not super toxic to humans, but it is like kind of toxic to humans. So they ask that you don't ingest it or inhale it or anything like that, right? And so she hoses this fucking wicker chair down with ant spray killer, which does nothing to the bees. And then she's like, "I don't know what to do about them. They're just there now, I guess." And I'm like, do you know of this thing called fucking Google? And you could just Google beekeeper in my area, and it'll show you the beekeepers in your area. And then you could call one of them and be like, "Do you know anybody, or do you perhaps remove bees from properties?" And they would say yes or no, and then you could use that person or call another. And she's like, "No, that's not how that works." Fast forward 3 days later, and I'm like, I was sitting there and I was like, "Just take your phone out." I didn't tell her what I was doing. I was like step by step instructions, and I want you to go to Google, and I want you to type this in. Are you ready? And she's like, "Okay," and I'm like, "Beekeepers in my area," and she's like, "That's not how that works," and I'm like, "That's exactly how that fucking works." And she did it, and within 30 oh, local valley beekeeper, I wonder if they would do it. And I just wanted to like throw something at her and leave. Um and it drives me up the fucking wall because like it just Yep.
I'm sorry, that's just funny. Do you know what kind of bees they were?
They're Africanized honeybees, so they're pretty aggressive. They're I believe the traditional American honeybees are the big fat ones.
Yeah, the big
Um
bumblebees. They actually don't sting you;
yeah.
they bite you.
Really?
Yeah, the big ones, the big boys that look like the tip of your thumb or something like that, big fat boys. They bite, they
Yeah.
don't sting.
Well, either way, I'm pretty sure these are the Africanized honeybees because they're thinner and angrier looking. They don't have the big bulbous butt. Um, so yeah, and there's like a couple hundred of them on the burrowed into the wicker chair that we have to. Well, hopefully this beekeeper will do something about. She's gonna call him Monday. Um, so that's been tremendously fun to deal with. And then this is my favorite thing. My grandmother has her knees are going out, and so they're giving her injections and steroids into her knees because she wants to avoid knee replacement surgery. But they've told her that she's going to have it regardless. And I'm like, look, if you get it done now instead of 5 years from now, it'll be easier. No, no, no. Well, whatever. It's your pain, not mine. But they give her these steroids like once every 3 months to get her through painful periods. And for anybody that's ever taken steroids, they give you tons of energy. They make you get up and do things. They make you hoover all the food into your mouth. So she's up. She's been wanting to paint the bathroom for like 3 months, 3 or 4 months now, but she's just not had the effort to do it. And so she took all these steroids, and suddenly she has the energy to paint the bathroom. And she paints the fucking bathroom. She started at 3 a.m. painting the bathroom. And she didn't finish. Like she stopped for a while. She did one part, did another. But anyway, I take a shower every day. I really have to because I have very oily skin and very oily hair. I feel gross if I don't take a shower every day, and I hate it. Because I just have very naturally oily skin and hair, and it makes me feel icky and gross. I would die in an apocalypse because of not being able to take a shower, and I would feel gross and icky, and I hate it. Um, I would be okay. I've been camping. I survive. You get over it eventually. But it bugs me when I can't because I'm a very like hygienic person. It bugs the fuck out of me. Uh, and so like I woke up and I take my shower in the mornings when I wake up, and um she's painting the bathroom, and I was like, okay, well, I'll go do some other things. And she's painting the bathroom till like 6 p.m. So I didn't get to take a shower till like an hour ago, and I was like, could you have like, I don't know, maybe and she mentioned it herself. She was like, yeah, I didn't get to take a shower either. And I was like, maybe you should have like let us both wake up and take showers before you decided to paint the whole fucking bathroom. That was the thing.
How big is your bathroom that it took that long to paint? Holy shit.
It is it's like it's two separate rooms conjoined with a doorway because it was built onto the house in the 90s. So it has a walk-in or a walk-in shower. And then it has like a big open area from that shower with some storage on the right, and then it has the toilet and sink in like a forward separate section.
Sounds nice though.
It's okay. It's not. I've had small bathrooms before. I'll be kind of honest. I like small bathrooms. I'm if I had $1 bajillion, I would have a well decorated, made out of nice material house, but I wouldn't have a fucking colossal super mansion. I'd have a really big garage for a bunch of cars, and a tennis court, and maybe like an underground dungeon for. Well, no, the Dungeons and Dragons dungeon would probably go upstairs in like a big foyer, and then there's another dungeon downstairs. We don't talk about that one. But I would have a reasonably modest house.
My
I
the house like living area wouldn't be that huge for me. And, I'd have enough rooms for family and stuff like that. But after that, the
yeah,
big thing would be the workshop. I'd have a big workshop.
I don't understand the point of giant ass living rooms, and I would like a big kitchen because I do like cooking, and I would have like a walk-in freezer and fridge. But aside from those ridiculously expensive things, like houses made out of like marble and all that, I'm like, man, no,
Well,
it's ridiculous.
that's also like it's the median size of a home in the U.S. these days is over 2,000 square feet. And I don't know why I just thought of this. Like that's actually way more than most people need, especially for like a single person, which a lot of those are single person homes, 2,000 square feet, which because of the way America is, we feel like that's not a lot or that's, average or whatever, and it is today. But and then we think, we go back and be like, well, back in the day, my grandfather could, support a family with a home, blah blah blah, off one job. And yeah, his home size, 800 square feet.
Well,
You have a
let's
home
not
triple the
pretend.
size.
I mean, let's
I mean,
not
no,
pretend
there's a
that
lot more than
inflation.
yeah, there's a lot more that goes into it than just that, but a lot of people like ignore these things that like just didn't exist back then, you know what I mean? Like so yeah, there's a difference, you know. Especially
Um,
that's why I actually hate I think it's when I was growing up and in the age that I should have been in college, it was an iffy deal. Nowadays, I think college is a ripoff. They've raised the price so much without changing the curriculum or making it more valuable. The actual value of the degrees has dropped while the price to obtain them has gone up. It's
well,
ridiculous. It's so
I mean,
fucking
here's the other
ridiculous.
thing. It's like since the year 2000, okay? So not even like we're not even going back. We're going back 23 years, okay? $20,000 a year, which was I believe still below the poverty line into the year 2000 is equivalent to $36,000 a year today. That's a huge increase. That's massive. That's insane. Um,
Yeah, inflation's a big deal. Like there was a guy online that was like, my grandpa made 30 bucks an hour and did all this, and I make 30 bucks an hour and this is all I can do. It's like, yeah, but if you account for inflation, your grandpa didn't make 30 bucks an hour today. He made 72 bucks an hour today. You know,
yeah,
like
exactly. If you wanted to make the median of like $42,000 a year, which was the median back in again in 2000 the year 2000, you'd have to make something equivalent to like 75 to $80,000 now. So it's the price of things is fucking insane. Inflation is absolutely crazy. The economy, everyone keeps saying, "Well, the economy's going to crash." Listen, I think we all want the economy to crash because it would lower prices, or so we hope to think, but I don't think it's going to because the inflation is companies jacking up prices for increases in revenue. This isn't like a supply and demand type of thing where there's less supply and more demand. It's that companies have control of the market in such a dictative manner that they can all just jack up the prices equivalently and we all suffer for it because we have nowhere else to go.
that's exactly what happened with college. Like they did an advertising campaign for something like a decade that basically devalued trade schools and everything like that and convinced everybody that you have to have a college degree. And at the same time, they just raised the price every single year, year over year,
Yep.
the price went up. And nothing has actually changed in the actual curriculum or the value of the degree. Some of them have actually gone down, but they continue to raise the price because they have everyone convinced that to succeed, you must have college degree. And
Well,
this is not worth it. This trade thing over here, which is actually much more worth it.
yeah, no, the trade schools are massively undervalued even today, as we're talking about them. But the other thing that is truly like undervalued is or sorry the other thing that's overvalued is just in general the college degree, especially by companies. I have a bachelor's in engineering and I worked for two private engineering firms. I worked in a 3D printing department, prototyping and printing department for one, and then for another one I was a project manager for a team of 5 people. And we did privatized, we would get project orders in from either construction companies to build things that they didn't necessarily have the equipment to build, or privatized industries that needed specific parts outsourced. There was all kinds of things that we did. Um, and they, for a lot of the floor work there, my bachelor's degree got me where I needed to go. I've since left those jobs and I'm looking for new employment now, and I have been, and the job market is an absolute fucking crux of a bitch. But one of the things that is ludicrous to me is that there are companies out there that want me to have a master's and 5 years experience to get paid less than $50,000 a year.
Oh yeah, it's insane some of the stuff they put down on things like that, and it doesn't add up either. Like there's that story that's like a semi-famous story about a guy who runs like a big social media company out social media advertising. Like it's supposed to be like you hire his company to handle your social media, you know,
Yeah.
and do the stuff like that. Runs it out in like California or stuff like that. And he was talking about like he hired these people that had like degrees out of colleges for that, and literally every thing he told them to do, they'd come back and ask this question and that question and this question and that. And anytime anything happened, they'd like, text him, okay, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? He's like, I hired you to do this fucking job. Do it. Don't ask me everything. Like, if you're asking me what to do, I might as well just do it myself. Just do it. Because these people were trained to follow directions in college. That's what they were trained to do. So
Yeah,
they were.
the
He was
only
like, I fired all of them and hired like a 19-year-old off the street that did the job that three of them did in half the time. He had no
the
training. He had just been doing social media his whole life.
the only thing a college degree nowadays shows you, and I'm gonna steal this line from the King of Tulsa. I think it's King of Tulsa. The only thing a college degree shows an employer is that you can attend the same place for a period of time, usually 2 to 4 years, and reasonably complete a task on time. That's all it shows. It shows absolutely nothing about your intelligence, your ability to perform the task, how well you perform the task, how much work experience you have, or, like, there's so many other factors that these degrees just don't mean jack fucking shit for, because Americans' college system, unless you're doing something like a doctorate, is
Yeah,
so
I will.
stupidly institutionalized, it's pointless.
Yeah, I will say there's a caveat of a few, very few,
Yeah,
most certain vocations. It makes sense, like doctor and stuff like that. It does matter, right?
it totally does, yeah,
But
because
for
there's a certain
most,
amount
it
of
does not. And there's some industries that have known this for a while. Like I remember when I was working in IT and people would come in with this fancy degree and everybody was like, that's fucking meaningless. What certifications do you have? What do you know how to
yeah,
actually
where are
do?
your
That's
certs, dude?
meaningless. We
Dude,
don't care about
certs are
that.
so fucking easy to get too. Like the number of which I actually should probably re-up some of my certs, but the number of certs that you can have that are like authorized by Google. Here's the fucking stupid part. I'm a very IT proficient person, right? When I went into college, I was like, hey, what's the test to skip all the basic IT stuff? Because like I know all this shit like the back of my hand. I'm wasting my time in these classrooms. Oh, well, it's a database SLQ management test of it. And I'm like, what? That's not taught in any of these classes, but that's what you're gonna. Hello? Excuse me? The test that they had to bypass those classes was so insanely hard, and none of that curriculum was taught in any of those classes, nor were the finals to any of those classes anywhere near how difficult that test was. That test was simply put there as a roadblocker so that you couldn't pass it and that you had to take their classes and had to get double dipped by their financial institutions to fucking. It's insane. The way that when you realize how fucked up the system is set up to fuck over the young, it's insane. It's there. Hey,
And
you.
it's literally become like a culture thing. Like they psyoped it into the culture that like people
Bro,
just believe, oh, you have to go to college, and it's like
I was
that's
literally, Brian, do you want to start a podcast? I'm like, no, 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 no. Video games, happiness, guys. Ah!
hey
Um,
hey 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 Guns. I have a question for you.
mhm.
Speaking of video games and happiness,
Yeah.
are you ready to have sexy time with a bear?
Oh, well, personally, I'm not really much of a furry, so I don't.
Yeah, I was
I'm
just like,
not,
oh my god, why? No, just turn it off.
it's not really my thing. Not that I won't try anything once, but there's some things reason I don't really think I'm a fan of being fucked by a bear, and I wonder how far I can go with that statement before I get us demonetized. I guess we'll find out. But aside from that, the fact that the option is there to be fucked by the bear is what I'm excited about. Not the actual fucking of the bear, it's the option of it, because that also makes me wonder what else is there. Because yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, just in so many ways. I have cautiously stayed away from some media because I don't want any spoilers. I have played 0% of this game. I've not played it all. I didn't play early access because I played Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. I loved what Larian did as a studio, and when I heard that they're making Baldur's Gate 3, I said, okay, if they're getting the funding that they need from Wizards of the Coast, and if they have the time that they need, this game will probably be fucking amazing. And surely enough, they've been developing this game for 6 years. They've been developing it for the last 3 years publicly. 3 or 4 years publicly. And it is at this precipice of, oh, this could be like my game of the year. And like, I knew Baldur's Gate 3 would be good, but I didn't expect it to be like, this could be better than Starfield good, guys. Which is like, I love that I can say that right now. I love that. That's so fascinating for me. There's so many things I'm looking forward to doing. My friends and I are already talking about how we want to position our playthroughs, because we played Divinity Original Sin 2 together. And one thing we learned is that we would rather play it separately by ourselves the first time through, because there's a bunch of different decisions we all wanted to make, and you end up battling amongst yourselves, right? And it kind of sucks when like one person ends up actually being the main character, Fane, and the other ones just kind of suffer in the wayside. Whereas if they were playing the character that they wanted to, that would have been less opportunistic for them. So maybe that will be the case. But, you know, we've talked about how, like, we're probably going to do our first playthrough by ourselves as our own personal characters. I know my second playthrough, I'm going to play the Dark Urge, and I'm just going to do every evil choice that there is to do, because that'll be amazing. And then our third playthrough, I'll probably play an origin character with friends, and all three of us are playing origin characters, and we get to go through and experience all their stories together.
Yeah, I'm excited for Baldur's Gate 3. I was worried at first because it was titled Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
And look, I'm a fan of the old Baldur's Gate games. I have played the living hell out of them because they are very replayable, right? And this just seemed to me to be an excellent version of this, but it just seemed to be Divinity Original Sin with a D&D skin on it, right? That can still
Yeah.
be a great game, but I was like, it feels kind of cheap naming it Baldur's Gate. But they've promised that it connects to what went on in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and there's going to be like returning characters, and yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm really excited to actually see that actually play out, because that was my biggest worry when during the entire development was it was basically just Baldur's Gate and name only, you
Yeah.
know, and it was really just a Divinity with a D&D skin. And let's be honest, it still plays mostly like Divinity and not like D&D, but I'm okay with that if, you know, if it's done excellently, which it seems to be, and if they can still connect the story and the lore and everything else in a meaningful way. So I'm excited to see how they pull that
Well,
off.
and here's something I've talked about to some of my other friends, and I seriously hope Larian does this, because that would be amazing, and it would be amazing. They have the potential, with as much infrastructure as they have built inside Baldur's Gate 3 already, with all these classes and subclasses, they have a majority of classes and subclasses. The only things they're missing are recently added things like Artificer, and the Blood Hunter, which is technically official through Critical Role being added. I think those are the only two things that are missing. They're missing a couple of, again, newly added races, but they have like all the original and official races. They could sell campaigns bundled from Dungeons and Dragons into this game. And I want you to think about this. They could do like a Tomb of Annihilation playthrough and then give the players all those asset packs. Because remember, in Divinity Original Sin 2, they had their Dungeon Maker, right? What if they did a dungeon maker for this game where it's straight up D&D and they give us expansions that, like, here's the Tomb of Annihilation expansion. So the entire Tomb of Annihilation expansion is now inside Baldur's Gate 3, and you could run Tomb of Annihilation as 4 to 6 players, and you don't need a DM because the game does the DMing for you, or you can have a person doing the DM and control a lot of the environmental stuff. That I mean, like,
That would blow my mind. I don't think if they were going to do that, I think we'd have heard about it already, though. I don't think they will. It
because
would.
they added the dungeon maker post launch of Divinity Original Sin 2, and it makes sense that if they approach Wizards of the Coast and they're like, hey, look, we did this for DSO2, or DOS2, we could do this for Baldur's Gate 3, and that means we could sell digital copies of all your source material. You know, Wizards of the Coast is like, okay, how much? Like, how much is it gonna cost us? Because how much money are we gonna make? I think what they might be waiting for is they want to see how good the game initially does. Because if the game does initially very poorly, it may not be worth their money to invest into that system, for Wizards to invest into that system for Larian. But if it launches to great reception and they have a great foundation, Wizards could look at that and say, okay, you got us. How much do you, 100 million, 150 million to get this out so we can start selling digital copies of players' hand? Because, I mean, think about the fucking gold mine that would be for both Wizards and Larian.
Yeah, I could totally see it. No one's done it properly, like made a true proper like system where you can create
Mm-hmm.
dungeons and have a DM run. Like
Yep.
Solasta really good. I get you, but it's not like
Yes.
no one's done it to that extent since Neverwinter Nights. There was that game that came out in between. It was like oh, what was the name of that? Give me a moment. I'll pull up my Steam and get uh Sword Coast Legends was trying to be the next Neverwinter Nights. But they only got so far and then they lost all their funding and then the entire studio shut down. And then Solasta's got it's Dungeon Maker, but it's just like creating your own module. It's more like modding than going that
Yeah.
deep. So if someone had the chops to pull it off,
It's
it, it,
Larian.
it could be Larian, but that's really hard to pull off properly too.
Well,
So
and see, here's the other thing that's been bugging me for years. Why don't we have a proper, like, Dungeons and Dragons MMO? It builds its fucking self. You have 12 or 13 classes, and they have subclasses. The max
we
level
have
is
two.
level 20. No. I mean, like, a proper, full MMO. Not the tab 1, 2, 3 bullshit with the... I'm talking about, like... Because I've played what's the full name of the MMO? It's not
Well, there's two.
exactly... Yeah.
There's Neverwinter, just
Yes, that's
Neverwinter, and
right.
then there's Dungeons and Dragons Online, which is the
Yes.
old 3.5 edition stuff.
So the Neverwinter Nights Online I've played, and I've not played Dungeons and Dragons Online.
That one's older. Yeah, that was one
Yeah.
of the first games to ever go free to play.
Um
Literally, it
I've
was one of the first. It started not, but it was one of the first MMOs to ever switch to the. It might have been the first or something like that. It
but
was a big deal back.
I mean
Yeah,
like a actual full, like, action combat oriented system, not a tab 1, 2, 3 targeting system, and they give you a big giant ass open world to explore, and they give you alchemy, they give you, I mean, like, I understand kind of what you're saying with Neverwinter, but Neverwinter is a very truncated MMO experience the further you get. It has its problems.
yeah. I,
Um
I think it's just that one MMOs are expensive. Uh, so a lot of people that do want to invest in making an MMO don't want to do it under a licensed property. And two, until the last, 5 years, D&D has been in pop culture, but it's not been the big draw, let's be honest.
sure.
It didn't really explode in popularity until like the last 5 years.
The other thing is that they need to make the MMO about the journey, not the end, because anybody that's played extensive amounts of Dungeons and Dragons campaigns will tell you being level 20 isn't as fun as everybody thinks it is. the types of challenges that your dungeon master has to create and throw at you to actually like suffice how powerful you are absurd and really don't get any fun. And it's really complicated with some classes too, especially when you have spells like Wish, which is like, okay, to what extent is your DM going to allows you to use the fucking Wish spell? Um,
That actually brings up a topic that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Uh, because I have 3 games that I've been running, my long-term games that I run that
mhm,
people pay
mhm,
for, that I am now considering and writing and planning the ends of. Because I think some of these are going to end near the end of this year or very beginning of next year.
mhm.
Most of them probably near the end of this year. And that's the thing I've been thinking about a lot is a lot of games are very reticent to end. Actual D&D games, people just don't want to like write an ending and actually end them, and games end up falling apart or feel like they drag on and then they fall apart or whatever, because people aren't willing to just say, all right, this is where this game ends. We don't need to keep going. We don't need to,
Yeah,
hit max level and beyond. Some will, Odyssey of the Dragon Lords is meant to hit 20 and then go beyond 20, and it will. The one I'm running. But other ones, that's not what this is, and you need to be willing to give it an end, because the journey is the thing. It's not that it's, that it's going forever or whatever, because that
to
could just,
be
yeah.
fair, Odyssey of the Dragon Lords, I feel like has a very clear ending point, and then the level 20 section is kind of like an epilogue or a post-credit scene
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
like
one of the
things your
shorter
characters.
sections.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Things your
and
characters can do to like without spoiling,
yeah, exactly.
the
Yeah,
Rum Gods.
yeah. Um, uh, that just feels like a post-credit scene, which is why I was really okay, and I really enjoyed the majority of Odyssey of the Dragon Lord campaign. It was fantastic, I thought. But yeah, I like the most fun Dungeons and Dragons is for me, I think, is between level 7 and level 13. Because that's when you're just starting to dip your toes into the, ooh, we're getting into some really cool and powerful stuff. And even like level 14 and 15 feel pretty good. I think the sweet spot if you want to end campaigns is like probably 15 to 17, somewhere in there. Because that's just when your character is starting to feel really powerful, and especially when you get to 17 and you're starting to get those like ninth level spells and stuff like that, you just start to grasp them, right? And then you can kind of have the epilogue of what your character is, post. But like the most fun D&D is absolutely between like level 7 to level 13, 14, because your character and you are kind of coming into contention of being able to play with the bigger boys, but there's still stuff that's like you can't touch, that's just way too powerful for you to even imagine going up against, right? Things that are considered like close to godhood is that 17, 18, 19, 20 range, right? um so like I think that's the most fun because you look up and you're like, you can almost touch the stars, but you still have aspirations. And having aspirations is what makes the journey fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's one positive thing. I mean, there's a lot of positive things, but it's a good positive thing that like I could say Matt Mercer has done, is he has planned an ending for all of his, what I mean, campaigns like from the
Yeah.
start. He knew how they were going to end. I think it would benefit him to do like all 3 campaigns that like seems to have been planned to
Well,
be 1 to 20. I think it would benefit him to run a few shorter ones, and also benefit the greater overall community, so that they can realize, hey, I don't have to run, what I mean, a 1 to 20 campaign. But yeah, yeah.
he hasn't had the ending planned out from the beginning for all of them.
Well, not like planned out, but like he knew in campaign 1 that the Vecna arc was what was going to end it. He knew for a fact, you know.
Sure, he did not know in campaign 2, spoilers by the way for Critical Role if you care. He did not know in campaign 2 that Lucian was going to be like the end all be all bad guy. Lucian was going to end up being a thing that was supposed to be chasing Talison's character Mollymok for a period of time, and they were going to like end up resorting that somehow. It's as things went on, because here's the thing: if you notice at the end of campaign 2, the big real world consequences ended up being Trent Ickathon tying back to the Cerberus Assembly, right? Mock, funny enough, while he was kind of like the end campaign big bad guy, once he was dead, the Somnovum just kind of like disappeared into the background to never be heard from again, and they had really no impact on the world. Versus Trent Ickathon and the Cerberus Assembly, all that had huge impacts on the world. So,
Now, I would say I don't know for sure. Sorry to interrupt, but I would say I don't know for sure, but I think because I remember watching that and considering it all too, I think he did have what he thought would be the ending planned, but it changed because Molly Mock died and the player started focusing on certain things that he wasn't expecting them to focus on. But I think he did have an original one planned.
sure, I mean, I have an original ending for the one that I for the campaign that I'm playing right now. That's already changed because of how, like, there's still a direction I am. They're not being pushed in, but they're kind of like, there are
Well,
little flares
but
that
I,
are
I
like,
think
hey, look at
I
this
think
thing
that's
over here.
I think that's a big mistake a lot of people who play D&D these days make is they'll start with like a module and they'll be like after module will continue, but they don't have any plan for after it, or they'll start with like all right, I've planned this beginning arc and then they expect to just make it up as they go, but you're not going to come to an actual proper ending that way.
You
You
know, yeah,
never
you
will.
you absolutely should have like a beginning, middle, and end loosely planned. And whether it stays the same or not is irrelevant. You want that loose kind of structure to hook things together, so that way there's this constant running thread. And this is the illusion of being a dungeon master that Brian and I have, great amount of experience with. The illusion to make it seem like it's all cohesive is when you start building these characters that have connections between things. The connections are irrelevant to the story. It doesn't, like, the story could go any number of ways. These connections that these characters have will still exist no matter what. And that's the important bit, because regardless of how the story actually goes, we still have these connections that these characters make. So there's a reason to head in that direction. It's the carrot on the stick, right? And then, yeah, you're still building the railroad out in front of the train the whole time. The make no, bones or illusions about it. We are actively like planning things just right in front of our players, trying to keep up. We might get like a week's head start, or whatever, right? But the only difference is good DMs know where the next station is. That is kind of like an end to kind of tie things together a bit, and then they know where the next station after that will be once they start getting to it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I get it's not about like planning it out directly, like saying this is
Yeah.
how it will end. It's not a railroad, but it's about having an idea of these things and being
Yeah.
willing to do that, being willing to say, okay, this we're gonna, do this, and then this is the end. And that's a mistake a lot. I see a lot with DMs these days is they, like, all right, we're gonna have this arc and then we'll do this, we'll just find out what happens after and we'll let the players guide it. And they don't have that either guideline to like, all right, this is what I'm going forward towards, and it may change along the way, but this is going to be our end, or they're not willing to, somewhere along the way say, okay, we need to, there's this like reticence to end campaigns properly that I see a lot these
Yeah.
days that I feel bad about.
Well, I also had there was also an interesting thing, speaking of railroading, because it's not, there's a difference between railroading. This railroading is forcing your players in to do certain things or certain situations, whereas the station to station bit, you start at a station. Let's pretend you're a train, right? You start at a station. You know where the next station is, but you don't know how you're going to get there. You're just kind of giving context clues and story hints and character revelations and things like that that kind of gently guide your players through a mountainous region to get to that station. Sometimes you don't always arrive at that station first. Sometimes you go to some other station your players made first, and then you end up coming to that station. But it's the station ends up kind of being like a focal point of where story ends kind of meet up, and you don't always get there all the same. The funny thing about this that I was taught that happened in the last episode of the campaign that I was playing, quick explanation. These the main characters had stolen supplies to blow into a vault and steal something. And they stole it from these people. They stole it and they ran away. They went to this vault, they scouted it out, they made their plans, the players did, to use these supplies to blow into the vault and steal the same thing that these other people had thought about doing. But they took 2 or 3 days to do it. So in that time, the NPCs that the players had stole from said, well, fuck, we either have to find another way to do this right now or they're going to go do it. So I rolled for, a new method and a plan and a timer for these NPCs because they're like, okay, we have to go do this now or these people are going to beat us to it, right? So they managed to get the supplies together to blow the back of the vault out and start their heist in a different means that they originally intended. And I rolled for a timetable on it, and the timetable was 3 days. Here's the thing, my players got to where this vault was on day 2, and were setting up to rob it and scouted it out at the end of day 2. And then the morning of day 3, they were there and they were ready to enact their plan. And they decided not to. And it's like, okay, well, I've already rolled this plan. These guys are going to be here by day 3 to immediately enact their plan. I can't just, giving my players a pass is unfair, not only to my players, but to the narrative and whatnot. And they're like, oh, that's a big coincidence. And I'm like, no, it's not. They knew what you were doing. You saw their plans and stole their supplies. They are free-thinking individual beings. They're going to go straight to the vault and execute their plan with whatever kind of leftover materials they have, right? That's what any smart criminal would do. Like, they're going to beat us to the punch, so we got to go. And they're like, oh, that's awfully big circumstance. It's like, what do you mean? That's what anyone would fucking do if that's happened to them. So sometimes players, sometimes players feel like DMs are railroading them no matter what, and that's kind of a shitty thing because you're in this weird catch-22.
Yeah, it's yeah, you're right. I don't need to like just say the same thing again, just differently. You're exactly right.
Yeah, it's players. Sometimes players need to understand you're in a living, breathing world, and there are consequences for your actions. And yes, as a dungeon master, I am actively against you with some of these NPCs. I'm also actively for you with some of these NPCs.
Yeah, I always tell people I'm not against you, but this NPC is, and I'm playing them like they are. I'm going to play them,
Exactly.
like I've had players like get temporarily upset because they attacked this fortress and they were like, well, we did this thing to like draw them out and they didn't come out. And I'm like, yeah, because they're not dumb animals, or this is a trained military force. Why would they come out of their
Yeah, why
defensive
would they
position?
leave their
Like,
well-fortified fort?
yeah,
That
like
seems...
I'm playing this in a way, like in some scenarios that's gonna work because these people are dumb, they don't have tactics, you know what I mean? But in this scenario, it will not, and that was broadcast beforehand, and you didn't think about it or pay attention to it. But that's not really on me or the characters or me being against you. That's just playing it in a immersive manner and expect and trusting my players to adapt and overcome.
Yeah, yeah. And I've prefaced my characters with, like, in the last, once they kind of, like, I go soft once they're I go soft usually. No,
That's
um
what she said.
yeah. I'm softer on my players up until like level 5 or 6. And then after like level 5 or 6, I give them a little talk. I'm like, okay, hey, you're at kind of like a critical mass point where you're starting to get kind of powerful, right? And you can do certain things, and it's only going to continue to go. So as you continue, things are naturally going to get harder, but stuff's going to actually like threaten your characters now and try to kill you. And like, if you make dumb mistakes, you will die, and I'm not going to babysit you for it. So please have your second characters ready. Don't be total idiots unless you're playing an idiot of a character, but stuff like that. We really should make that Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
I've thought about having like a podcast that discusses like the news around it and just review
Well,
things and stuff.
there's
And but there's I don't know.
so I know the problem you're already thinking about that you're running into. We would run out of content to talk about.
Yeah, I'd run out of proper content to talk about. I feel like.
So I'm thinking it's not like a weekly or bi-weekly show. It's a once a month series where we have a planned topic to talk about for a period of time. And so whether
That's
you're
also the
talking
type of podcast that takes, like this one, it's more conversational, and I love it.
right,
We just come to this thing and we're like, "Hey, you ready to talk about stuff this week?" And we just both bring random topics. We don't have like show notes. We don't have like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Something like that would take more. It would definitely be, we'd have to have planned topics, research, show notes, to do properly.
to a
It'd still be
degree, yeah.
conversation.
I
It'd
think
still be
there's a
conversational,
way
but there's, you can't just say we're discussing, this module and that's it. There.
I think there's ways we can skirt around it and be a little lazy here and there, but you are right to a degree. Um Speaking of, I don't really want to talk about it, but let's mention it in passing because I don't want to talk about it anymore. Um, Microsoft is buying Activision. It's pretty much all but confirmed. People think that the CMA can actually do something about it. No, they can't. The United
Oh no,
Kingdom,
Microsoft is going to close Monday without their approval. That's
yeah,
already
yeah.
like that.
The
No,
Here's the
like for
thing.
real. Like you can tell because the stock market has already deleted Activision Blizzard and are merging them with Microsoft and
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
up like a new misnomer and stuff. So like yeah, they know and they're doing it. So yeah, it's happening.
Here's the thing that people don't understand. Um, the CMA, the United Kingdom, is maybe 6% of video game sales annually in the world. Microsoft would rather lose 6% of their sales than lose this $70 billion deal with Activision. So they will just withdraw from the entire United Kingdom market if the United Kingdom continues
They
to
don't
play
even
pissball.
they don't even need to do that. Everybody's like thinking too much. All they have to do is divest just in that market by using a third party to run this certain thing for them,
Yeah,
which will probably be around their cloud gaming. And then there's nothing the CMA can even do about it. So
yeah, yeah.
that's, they're going to try to come to a deal because it's better to do that. But if push comes to shove, they're, because they're going to close and then try to come to a deal. But if they can't, they'll just divest and run it through another third party. And the CMA is going to, suck their thumbs because there's nothing they can do about it.
Dude, the FTC. Okay, so first off, I think we should state something very clearly. Brian and I both believe that both PlayStation and Microsoft slash Xbox are evil corporations that want your money and nothing else. Okay? We both pretty firmly believe that. We currently prefer what Microsoft is doing because they are much less anti-consumer than Sony is, but we still believe that Xbox and Microsoft are a giant evil corporation that just wants your money. We don't think they're fucking stars and sunshine and roses and sparkles coming out of their ass, okay? So if we had to explain why this consolidation of Activision Blizzard into Microsoft is a good thing, I would do it like this. So Joe makes ice cream, and Joe's really good at it. Bob also makes ice cream, and Bob's ice cream is pretty good too. Joe has more flavors though. Bob starts struggling because he decides to have less flavors. He decides to have less stronger flavors, but he doesn't have the variety, so he starts to struggle. Joe gets more popular and has more customers because of his range of flavors. Joe then decides to pay suppliers to not supply Bob with ice cream. Bob's ice cream gets worse. Joe's ice cream gets better. Joe now has way more customers than Bob. Joe raises his prices, and the customers don't like it, but the customers can't do anything because Joe controls the majority share of the market. Joe also tells the suppliers that he's not going to pay the same price, so he cuts theirs lower too. Joe seems to have won. Bob lost, suppliers lost, and customers lost. But then Bob decides to buy one of the suppliers to Joe. And now, because he owns part of the suppliers, Joe is not in full market control and Bob is back in the game. That's exactly what's happening, by the way. For those of you that don't understand, like, Xbox buying Activision isn't as big of a deal as everybody think. Sony has like close to 40%, if not more than 40% market share control. Xbox has 18%. You could double the amount of Xbox sales of consoles total, and Sony would still be ahead by like 4%.
Yeah, and this doesn't double. This only puts Xbox in the 20% range, and Sony's still in the 40% range.
So yeah, Sony is not, this is fine. Sony's not going anywhere. This just continues to make Xbox relevant. Otherwise, they would not be relevant. And yes, this would be worse for consumers because the only choice you would have is PlayStation. There wouldn't be an Xbox to have a choice with. So yes, there would be reduced choices because of it. If for some reason you think reduction in choice is good for the consumer, you are too dumb to be listening to this podcast. Please leave.
Yeah, I think I agree with what the judge said. I actually read her whole document that she put out, and she basically said that the FTC failed to like produce any viable way that this would hurt anybody except for Sony.
Yep.
But we're not worried about it hurting Sony. Perhaps it is bad for Sony, but this would be overall good for gamers, the future of gamers, and competition. Sony should have never been a part of this discussion.
Yes.
And it really is sad that we have to keep bringing them up because this is about competition. And look, what was it, 20 years ago when Xbox was on top in the 360 era and they started doing
Well,
dumb
this is the
bullshit,
thing.
and we're hurting competition. I was cheering for Sony and what they were doing at the time to like it's yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. People say like, oh, when Xbox was ahead during the Xbox 360 era. If you go back and you look, Xbox still wasn't ahead then. They were a little behind Sony. They were close to even, but they were still technically behind. And that's why they were doing so many pro-consumer things, is because they thought they were they were a little behind, but they thought they were inching closer and closer to being even in the market. And then yes, Microsoft made some very bad choices. And as a result, they're very behind in the market now, more than double behind in the market. So Xbox has never been ahead in the market ever at any point. And even, like I said, even with this purchase, they won't be anywhere close to Sony still. Even
Yeah,
if they made...
if you look at it via market share, Sony will still be almost doubled it, almost, but not quite double. They are over double them at the moment. If you look at it via like just property owned, not market share, it's still Tencent and then Sony and then Microsoft. So, and why
Yeah,
is
and
no one fucking talking about Tencent? That's the real danger.
specifically, we're talking about market share in the gaming space. Please do not look at Microsoft software sales as a market share against PlayStation, because yes, the $11 trillion company will blow PlayStation's 110 billion dollars out of the water, you know.
But that's not a fair comparison because that's
yeah,
not
exactly.
It's
It's
not
a
how
dumb
actual
comparison.
companies are run, and it's not how actual laws are. Yeah.
So yes, it is good for the consumer. I'm tired of discussing it. I'm tired of seeing PlayStation stand takes. I'm tired of seeing Xbox fanboy takes about how fuck you son. No, it's not what it's about. It's
Yeah,
the
it's gonna be real weird in like a month when Xbox and PlayStation are sending each other dev kits and making up about this because they're a business and they don't care and don't take anything personally, and that's what's gonna make
I
them money. And all of the culture war or console war motherfuckers are standing there like, wait, what? Like looking
I
around.
think Sony's going to try to make a stink out of this and not send them dev kits still. I really do.
You think they'll mess up that much? Because I mean, look, he admitted in private that this is meaningless, and it's not going to lose them any money or whatever.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I think as far as like him trying to stop them, he was going to make a case for it, but I think afterwards they're gonna see the money. They're gonna follow the money. I don't know.
I do think eventually they will follow the money. I think you are right, but I think within the first couple of years they will fuck up, and they will not send Activision dev kits for the next generation PlayStation, for Call of Duty optimization, because I think they are going to try to again downplay and hurt Microsoft's market position as much as possible, which may mean alienating Call of Duty, which is, I think, in the long run, a very bad strategy. But you need look at how anti-consumer PlayStation is and some of the dumb things that they've done to hurt Xbox. I don't think they're above doing this. I think they will withhold dev kits from Activision because they would, and they'll be they won't do this privately. They'll speak very publicly about, we don't feel comfortable sharing our industry secrets with Xbox because they're untrustworthy and our audience should hate Xbox, right? They're going to weaponize that. I totally believe that they are, to hurt Xbox's market position with negative publicity as much as possible.
I could totally see that. It would be a dumb decision in my opinion if they follow the money. They won't do
Yep.
that. I could also see them. If they do that, I think it will be the biggest mistake. I think maybe they won't do that, but they'll do the in between, where this thing they're doing, where they've been going to developers behind closed doors and paying them to say off Microsoft and do this and that and stuff like that. I think
Yeah.
they'll amp that up a lot more. But yeah,
I do think, for the record, I do think pretty much everything Bethesda makes from here on out is going to be exclusive to Xbox. I think the next Elder Scrolls will absolutely be. I know they said it may not be, or that it would be software suicide, but they have Activision now. They're absolutely going to have exclusive content for Xbox Game Pass Call of Duty. They're going to have Activision games on Game Pass and Blizzard games on Game Pass soon.
yeah, I want to say there will be exclusives 100%. And if you didn't think there would be, you were dumb, because they
I
even
don't
admitted this is about
call
getting exclusives. But I don't think everything will be.
no.
There are
Call of
certain
Duty
things
will
that are just
Call of Duty will still be on every platform. That will remain the same. Call of Duty is going to be on every platform because of software sales. It sells way too much to not have it on every platform. It would be hurting themselves financially to not have it on every platform. But I do think stuff like Blizzard games, the majority of Blizzard audiences are on PC. So they're not going to hurt themselves that much if they make Diablo 4 or 5 or Seasons exclusive to Xbox. They're not going to hurt themselves that much if they make the next bunch of Overwatch 2 content
I don't
exclusive
think
to
they'll
Xbox.
do it to anything that's already on PlayStation. And I think maybe some big blockbusters will be exclusive, and then some smallers won't be. Because I mean, look at things like Minecraft is bigger than Halo, bigger than Call of Duty. Okay,
Yeah, it is.
and they still put Minecraft Legends on PlayStation. So
Yeah.
and that's new. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
because it sells well. Like, look, Microsoft is being very intelligent. They understand this is about software sales. It's never been about the console war. It's about selling as much software as possible. And Sony is a platform that they can sell software on. And nothing is better than having your active competition pay you money because you're selling stuff on their platform.
yeah. There's actually something I wanted to talk with you about that this segues into. I have to find the article. Give
Ooh,
me
ooh,
one
ooh,
moment.
ooh. But yeah, it'll be interesting nonetheless to see where this goes. In total, I'm excited because this means Bobby Kotick will be out within the next year, probably, maybe even the next 6 months. This also means Microsoft has their hands on a bunch of really juicy IP, really juicy IP. And I also hope this means a new direction for Call of Duty long term in the future, because I think COD's in a really sorry state at the moment, and I want to see where it goes. I hope they kind of like revitalize its development cycles. Have I stalled long enough yet, Brian?
Not quite, because I can't find it.
Do you remember what it was about roughly?
Yes, it was a developer talking about their game. And he basically said, because this is also people talking about. There's a lot of people that claim that Game Pass itself is bad for the industry
It's really
and bad
not.
for developers and this and this. And this is a like the head of a studio that came forward that said Game Pass enabled us to make this game what it is and not what it, would have been. And doing so made it better for PlayStation customers as well because it's also on PlayStation. But they were like, what, putting it on Game Pass and getting those funds so that we could properly finish it right made a better game for everyone, not just Game Pass. And I was trying to find that article because I was like, this is another example of a developer just coming out straightforward and talking about the positives, and people just still refuse to believe, and they act like this is everything's going the way of like Disney Plus and Netflix where they're losing customers. Also, of note, everybody was like, "Oh my God, Netflix is getting rid of multi-user logins. They're going to lose so many blah blah blah." Yet they actually went up by like 20%.
I
The
don't
game
use
they get
Netflix.
no, but like everybody was so convinced that it was such a bad business decision and blah blah blah, and it was all gonna fail. Yeah, their accounts went up by like 20%, paid accounts.
Here's
So
the problem though. They expect them to go up another 20% next year, and that's not going to happen. They'll go up maybe 5 or
yeah,
6%.
that won't happen.
The
But
this
but
the
everybody was saying this
capitalist
this this decision was going to end them, and it just really didn't.
the capitalist concept of we have to have so much growth every single year is fucking bizarre to me. Because if you know anything about companies in general, you can't like constant growth forever is unsustainable. It's just unsustainable. So like I don't know where these companies come off of that they think they're going to fucking grow forever. It's crazy to me. Um but no, Xbox Game Pass is really good for developers. I know because Metro Exodus was on Xbox Game Pass. I played about half of it. I never beat it. I really enjoyed it. I got busy doing something else. I don't remember what. It was a couple of years ago. And then Metro Exodus was on sale during the Steam Summer Sale for like $10. So I bought it because I wanted to finish it. So now I'm playing it from start to finish again. Because otherwise I would have never got to. So literally Game Pass made me buy a game. And actually, literally Starfield's coming out on Game Pass. I'm still buying Starfield. Payday 3 is coming out on Game Pass. I'm still buying Payday 3. Forza Motorsport, the next one's coming out. I'm still buying it. There's so many games coming out on Game Pass that I'm still buying anyway because I want the deluxe edition. I want the DLCs, yada yada yada. Game Pass is really good. Shove it up your ass, fanboys. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, there may be specific scenarios where like putting this, you know, thing on there might not be good for that specific game, but overall, it's good.
Yeah, it really is good.
Especially for, if you're not like a, multi-billion dollar backed, dev studio, Game Pass is amazing for you.
Yes, yes, it is. There was something else I wanted to briefly talk about, but I've. Oh, I did actually want to talk about this a little bit because it's what I've been playing lately. I've been playing a lot of BattleBit. BattleBit's great still. It has its balancing problems, which is kind of like scratching on my itch to play it. So, But the other thing that I've been playing a lot, and I've been playing it in co-op and modded with a friend, is Outward. Do you remember what Outward is?
I think so. Isn't that that's like the survival type game, right?
No, it is sort of. It's a fantasy survival game. It's not really survival. I mean, kind of. It's a single player fantasy game.
Okay.
Um
Oh, I just looked it up. I remember. Yep, now that I'm looking at the Steam page, I remember this. Yes, because we've talked about this before.
uh and so I initially played a little bit of it um some years ago. And I was like, didn't really think of it was for me. Came back and recently played it co-op with a friend. Um and it went off with a much better start. we ran into some things that we thought were stupid, so we modded it to make them more fun. And as a result, it was more fun. And then we ran into some more things that we really just kind of didn't like. Some of them were so this game has a couple of problems. The combat is fine. The looting is fine. The armor, the skills, all that's fine. This game's biggest problem is how much you fucking run. So currently, you can see how fast we are moving. We have a mod. We have two mods, actually. We have one that gives us travel potions that increase our speed by up to 50% when traveling. When we get into combat, they stop working. The second one is we have a pair of boots that have no resistances or protection on them, but they give us 100% running speed. And this is again for traveling.
So this is double movement right now?
Yes.
Ooh. I was about to say, that kind of looks like a sprint, and, I'd expect you maybe to have stamina and have to slow down for a little bit. But if that's like double the oh my God.
Yes, you're getting the picture now. This game is slow. The bigger problem is that this developer, I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it kind of feels like they did. It feels like they padded how much game time there is in this game by making you run everywhere. Fucking everywhere.
I wonder if they made the mistake of making it realistic, because there's this thing in games where rooms and
this is normal movement, by the way. What you're seeing here is normal movement.
Yeah, there's this thing in video games where rooms and movement are unlike real life, even in like FPS games and like modern day kind of stuff. It's everything's like twice as big as it would be, because for some reason when we're in like an FPS mode on like a video game, everything feels smaller to us, right? If we were actually in like a regular 10 by 10 room in real life, we'd feel fine. In a video game, we'd feel cramped and like we couldn't even move left and right, right? And the same thing with movement. Movement in real life, uh, you know, just when you put that rate of movement in a video game, it feels slow and clunky. So they have to speed it up and make your guy do these long strides, and it feels right and looks right in the video game, but it's not realistic at all. And I wonder if the movement speed is actually like true realism, and that's why it just feels awful.
Yeah, it does feel.
They made that age-old mistake, because that's like a thing in game dev where like you learn that when you start developing games of making it realistic is it feels like shit.
Yeah, and no, it absolutely does make it feel like I don't know if that's what they did here, but it does feel bad. The other thing that makes it feel bad is that you have a backpack that you can only carry so much weight in. Excuse me, coughing my lungs out here. You have a backpack that you can only carry so much weight in. You can see here, my backpack has 100 pounds, and then my pockets normally have 10 pounds. We have a mod that adds 25 pounds to our pockets, and then adds 100 pounds onto our backpack. The reason why this feels so bad is because when you go to a dungeon and you clear the dungeon out, you can clear maybe one dungeon out, and then your backpack is full. And then you have to run all the way back to town to your house, dump all of your extra supplies, and then run all the way back out if you want to do anything. And because the running takes forever, because the game is so slow, this is running, by the way. Because the game is so slow, it takes forever to go from one dungeon back home, dump everything back out to a different dungeon, or in some cases you don't even get to finish it, and you either continue to progress and pick what you think's the most important, or stop and there's a lot of stuff you leave behind that's relatively important, crafting supplies, and crafting is super important to this game. It's a very hardcore game. You don't you use consumables a lot to do damage, to heal yourself, to have certain stat buffs. And there's also things like burnt mana or health or stamina. So if you use too much stamina, you burn some of it, which means it's no longer usable or recoverable. The same thing goes for your health and mana, which means you don't always have all your health and mana, and you can create stuff to, get rid of this. But it's these extra layers of like this hardcoreness that are cool in the idea of it's really cool, but they eventually just get to the point that it's like, okay, this isn't really fun
It's
anymore.
tedious. The
Yes, it's
execution
extremely tedious.
the execution becomes tedious. Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that. And
And
then
it's
looking into the game more, I think they did fall into that trap where like, they tried to
yeah,
make the movement and the size of certain things like realistic, and it just doesn't translate to video games. Like if
yes.
you ever want to like get an idea of how like off from reality video games truly are, Doom Guy is 32 pixels wide, which translates in game to over a meter wide.
Yeah.
Okay. His shotgun is 63 pixels long, which would be a 6 foot and 5 inch shotgun. Okay. And he runs 30 frames, 30 units per frame, right? Which translates to 50 miles an hour. Does
Yeah.
it feel like you're moving 50 miles an hour when you're playing Doom?
No.
Because you are. That's how warped video game and our perceptions of it are. But it feels good in Doom. It feels like it's natural, regular, real movement, but it's not. That's just what they have to do to make it feel that way.
Yeah, and like another really good example is Forza Horizon or Forza Motorsport, any of the Forza games. Um, there's this weird thing that between 150 to 250 miles an hour or anything above that, you don't really notice that you're going any faster. In most video games, Forza has done the best job of making it feel noticeable that you are moving faster, but they still have some difficulties with it. So like sense of movement and speed and stuff in video games is really fucking weird. And so yeah, that's probably kind of what they did here. They tried to make it feel realism. And so when you combine those things, when you combine inventory space being very limited, when you combine slow movement, you spin half of this game, literally not an exaggeration, half of this game running from one point to the next. To go from Berg, which is a town in the middle of the map, back to the starting zone, which is on the western side of the map. So we're not even going from one side to the other. We're just going from a town located kind of in the center to a starter town on the west coast. It takes 11 minutes.
Jeez.
11 fucking minutes.
This brings back the old days of like WoW when I'd like take a flight point and then go take a 30-minute lunch.
Yeah. And so like Ben and I were talking about this because we were literally getting bored. We would be running with each other and we would have to stir up conversation to keep each other entertained. Otherwise, we would be bored out of our fucking minds.
There is something to be said about like our attention span these days and what media has done to it, but that's extreme. That's too much.
I mean,
That's
yeah, it's 11 minutes of it's like riding in a car or going on a car. I don't play video games to drive in a car. Well, okay, that's a lie. I actually do play video games, but I'm racing in those. I'm going as fast as I gotta go fast.
All right, Sonic.
But this game has managed to make travel so mundane, which is weird because the combat in this game is excellent. Okay, the combat's wonderful. The different types of looting and enemies and resistances and all this stuff is really fun. If they condensed the world to half the size that it is, this would actually be a pretty palatable game despite its very hardcore nature, which I do think some of the things in this game are unnecessarily difficult, which is a whole other talking point. And by the way, I've played and beat every Souls-like FromSoft, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Demon Souls, blah, 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 blah game. Loved them all. Didn't think any of those things were unnecessarily difficult. This game has some stuff that's just dumb, I can kind of look past that when the combat and the encounters really shine. But it's the other stuff of having to walk 5,000 miles in some dude's fucking shoes that annoy
You
the
wanna
piss out of me.
you wanna know the funny part? That
Huh.
there is a sect of players out there that absolutely love it because of this, and would actually prefer it to be slower, and if they
Oh
changed
my
it, these players would
god.
rage quit the game.
I know. I know.
I
And those
just
players just need to understand that they're wrong and they have shitty taste in things.
uh, I mean, yeah, it's kinda wild. But yeah, I was mildly interested the first time you brought this up, like, what, 2 years ago or something
Yeah,
like
don't
that?
be.
Yeah, I'm not yeah, you played it for me, Guns, I'm good.
It it needs mods to be palatable. It really does. It needed several mods to
He
be
says that,
palatable.
and I think he says that and truly means it, not in like Skyrim where people say Skyrim needs mods. No, you could play Skyrim as a full game without
You
mods.
can skate,
It's
yeah, you
better.
can,
It's better with mods, but it doesn't
yes.
need them.
Yes, absolutely. Like Skyrim as a vanilla experience is a fine game. With mods it is infinitely better. This game as a vanilla experience is I wouldn't even say like the gameplay elements of it are above average, but other elements like the travel and the weight restrictions are so below average that it actually makes the rest of the game more painful. So I would actually like the vanilla experience of Outward, I would give it a 4 out of 10 because the traveling and the inventory experiences make other parts of the game so painful. It's such like an active pain point when you're playing because you pick something up and you're like, oh, now I walk even slower because I've only got 10 fucking pounds and my goddamn. It's such a bad thing. Ugh. Anyway,
Sounds like it's a wonderful game that Guns recommends.
hit him with the socials, Brian.
You can find me at 7-Bit Brian, the number 7BITBRIAN, basically on everything. And you can find him at Guns Games, GUNZGAMES, on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and all the other socials. And this has been the live service podcast. And we did not trend up this week. We actually didn't, have a 4-hour session.
I was actually trying to keep it shorter, but like we still got to talk a little. We're still shorter than last week. We're gonna keep it that way. Thank you for
Yeah.
watching, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.